Hello, guys. How are you? I hope you're having a nice day today. Now, with all the wildfires that are going on in Canada and the smoke that's coming down to the United States and the heat, I want you guys to please be safe. Be careful and please be safe. Now, I thought today that I would tell a story about me. Well, I'm remembering the past, so I thought I would tell a story about the past. Another time where my mom was there for me, and she saved my life. Now, this happened in 1987, but it started in 1986. I was pregnant, wasn't quite sure, but kind of sure, so I went to the doctor, and the doctor did a pregnancy test and confirmed that I was pregnant and told me to follow up with my primary care physician. So I didn't go to see my primary care physician right away. I waited a few months. And also, the original doctor that took the pregnancy test, he kind of estimated that the baby would be born the following year in April, which I was excited about because I'm thinking, oh, my baby is going to be born the same month as my twin brother. So when I finally went to my primary care physician, which was about 3 months later, my primary care physician, he looked at me and he said, oh my gosh, you're pretty big for 3 months. He said, it looks like you're going to have twins, which I was so glad, guys. I mean, I was over the moon because I'm a twin. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a blessing. I'm a twin. I love twins. I'm going to have twins. So the doctor set it up. He said, we're going to do an ultrasound today and check the baby and make sure everything looks good. So the ultrasound came out fine, but the doctor tells me, my primary care physician tells me, oh, you're not going to have twins. You know, we only hear one heartbeat, and so you're not going to have twins. You're just going to have one baby. They asked me if I wanted to know the sex of the baby, and I said no, I wanted to be a surprise. And so the doctor wrote out a prescription for iron pills to make sure my iron didn't get low during the 9 months pregnancy. And he set up the next appointment, and so I would go back with each appointment and everything that was set for me. The last blood test that the doctor did, he did confirm that I was anemic. And he told me, he said, don't worry about it. Just keep taking the iron pills and everything is going to be fine. So now he never checked again to make sure that the month was correct for delivery, for the birth. We just kept it at April, which I was still happy about it. But near the end of March of 1987, I think it was the 24th. It was the 24th, and it was at night, and I started feeling really, really weird. Now, I had a good pregnancy up till then. I ate a lot. I did a lot of exercising because I was still working, running up and down the stairs, trying to catch the train on time, doing power walks to the train station so I could catch the train on time. And this was every day. I worked all the way up till the last 3 months. So I had plenty of exercise during the time of the 9 months pregnancy. So like I said, that night, I'm just trying to make sure I got the dates right, the days right. Yeah, it was the 24th. I started feeling weird. I started feeling a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit uneasy, not having labor pains or anything yet, but that weird uncomfortable feeling. And I felt the baby turn. The baby's head was up, and then the baby turned where the head was down. So I went and told my mom. She was in the bedroom, and I told her what was going on. And she said, "Didn't you tell me the doctor said the baby was supposed to be born in April?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so she looked at my stomach, and she said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, girl, your stomach have dropped." And so she started rubbing my stomach and turning and rubbing and turning. And she turned the baby back to the upward position. And a few seconds later, the same thing happened. I felt the baby turn in my stomach where the head was pointing down. So I told my mom again, and she tried for a second time. Now, my mom, when she was younger, she used to be a midwife. She would assist in one of her relatives because one of her aunts was a midwife. And so it seems like my mom was the only person in the family that was interested in a lot of different things that the family was into that they needed help with. So whenever a situation arrived, they would always come and get my mom. So my mom learned about the turning the babies when they're inside the stomach, being able to tell whether or not the baby is going to be a boy or a girl, and knowing what the stomach looks like when it drops, when it's time for the baby to born. And after the second time, my mom says, whether you like it or not, you're getting ready to have birth. I mean, not have birth. You're getting ready to give birth. And so she said, well, we're going to call the ambulance to come and pick you up. Well, we called the ambulance, and can you believe it, guys? The ambulance never showed up. The ambulance never showed up, and the ambulance never, the people that answered the phone never told us that the ambulance wasn't going to come, or why, or whatever. So we had to end up walking to the hospital from where we lived at. Thank the Lord to high heaven that the hospital was only 4 blocks. Because at that time, we did not have money to call a cab. So my mom had scraped up a little bit of money, and we didn't know how much it was going to cost. And I told my mom, I said, let's just walk there because it's only 4 blocks. It's not that far. So my mom got ready, I got ready, and we walked down to the hospital. And we went in through the emergency room, and we told the people at the desk what was going on. They got me registered in. and they sent me up to the maternity ward. My mom went up with me, and my mom said, well, I got to go to work tomorrow, so during my lunch break, I'll call and check on you and see how you're doing, and then after work, I'll be up there to the hospital and sit with you for a while. So I said, okay. And a short time afterwards, the doctor came in. This after my mom left, the doctor came in, and he looked and gave me a quick examination and everything. And he asked me, he said, did your water break yet? And I said, no, my water have not broke yet, but I feel some slight labor pains. And he asked me how far apart they were. They were like 4 minutes apart or so forth. And so he ended up puncturing the water bag and everything. So he said, well, I'll be back later to check on you. And after a few hours, he came back in and he checked, and he told me, he said, you're starting to dilate. You're 25 centimeters right now. So he thought that was a good sign. Then he left back out, and a short time later, the nurse came in, and she checked on me, and I hadn't dilated anymore. So I asked her for an epidural shot because the labor pain started coming more frequently, and they were getting more harsh. So she said, okay, I'm going to go get your epidural and I'll be right back. Of course, she never came back, guys. She never came back. And then when she did finally come back, she said, how you doing back here? And I said, fine. She said, well, I had to come and check on you. She said, because everybody in the maternity ward, all the women here in the maternity ward is screaming and hollering and making a lot of noise, and you're the only person that's not making a lot of noise. So me being sarcastic and being in control for the most part, I just told her, I said, I'm not going to be in this hospital room screaming and hollering like a damn fool. So she looked at me and she started laughing. And she said, I'll be back to check on you. And I asked her again I said, are you going to give me an epidural? And she said, yeah, I'll be back with it. So I said, okay. Of course, she never came back. Now, I had been in, oh no, this happened on the 23rd. This was on the 23rd. Then, okay, the 24th came around. And we went through the same procedure all over again. Labor pains was every 90 seconds. They would last for 90 seconds. And they was extreme, and I tried doing the breathing technique. That doesn't work, guys. If it works for some people, it didn't work for me. But I did it anyway. The nurse also suggested it and everything. Of course, she never brought the epidural back, so I never asked her for it again. And I went through the whole day, same procedure. Doctor coming in, back and forth checking. Still haven't dilated any more than the 25 centimeters and everything. My mom called during her lunch break to check. I told her the baby wasn't born yet. And she came up after work and she sat with me for a couple of hours, and then she went home so that she could get enough rest to go to work the next day. So then, and then that was the 24th. And then the 25th, the next day, the whole thing started all over again. Doctor coming in and checking, nurse coming in and checking. Nothing is happening. Haven't dilated any more than 25 centimeters. So the nurse came in and she said, you don't seem to be dilate. You don't seem like you're going to dilate anymore. You might have to have a C-section. And I looked up at that lady. She wasn't a nurse then. She was that lady. I looked up at that lady and I told her, I said, there is no way in hell I'm going to let you cut on me like that, because I know exactly what a C-section is, and there was no way in hell I was going to let them cut on me like that. And I let her know, you are not cutting on me like that. So she's like, okay. And she went back out. And a short time after that, maybe a couple of hours, the doctor came in, my primary care physician, and the nurse came back in with the doctor. And before he could open his mouth and say anything, the nurse told him, she says that she's not going to have a C-section. So he looks at me really strange and he said, okay. And he turns around and walks out. And the nurse follows him. Well, my mom, she ended up calling around lunchtime, and she asked me the same question that she asked me the day before on the 24th. This is the 25th. Finally got the dates right, guys. And she asked me, she said, did the baby born yet? And I said, no, ma'am. So she said, well, I'll be up after work. And she came after work, and she sat with me for about an hour and a half. And she asked me how I was doing and if I was okay. And I told her I was fine. You know, just going through the regular labor pains and everything. And so she says, okay. She said, well, I'm getting ready to go home. She said, and like I always do, during lunchtime, I'll call and check on you. And I'll be up to the hospital after you get off from work. After I get off from work. I said, okay. So the 26th, same routine started all over again with the doctor and the nurses coming in and checking, not doing anything for me. I'm just laying there. I guess when I told them I wasn't going to have a C-section, then, I don't know what they was waiting for or what else they could have done at the time, but they wasn't telling me anything and they wasn't doing anything for me. So on the 26th, my mom called me during a lunch break, and she said, her exact words, you haven't had the baby yet? And I said, no, ma'am, I haven't. And then she asked me, she said, well, what are they doing for you up there? I said, they're not doing anything for me. I said, they come in and check, and they tell me I haven't dilated anymore, and then they leave back out until the next time. So my mom says, well, I'll be up there after work. So I said, yes, ma'am. So the pain was as usual. It was coming less than every minute, and it was lasting for 90 seconds. I could hear everybody, the women and stuff, hollering up and down the ward, screaming and hollering up and down the ward. And I was in the room quiet, listening to them, counting the seconds down when I would get relief from the pain. And all of a sudden, all the sound from the maternity ward started fading out. And then I couldn't hear it anymore. And then I blinked a couple of times. I was trying to sleep between the pain. And I thought I fell asleep. I opened my eyes, and I wasn't in the hospital anymore, guys. I was in this dark tunnel. And I saw this light way down at the end of the tunnel. And I started walking toward it, slowly taking my time, walking toward it. Guys, I was at peace. I was at peace. There was no more pain. There was no more sorrow. I wasn't thinking about family or anything. All I knew is that's the direction I was supposed to go in, which is walking toward that light. Now, I know you guys are going to think, you might even say in the comments section below, oh, you had an outer body experience. No, ma'am, no, sir. An outer body experience is more in the lines of your spirit leaving your body and you're floating above your body and you're looking down and you can see your body laying there, whether it's in the bed, at home, in the hospital, or whatever. And of course, if someone was to come in the room, you would be able to see that too. No, I did not have an outer body experience. I had actually died. Now I want you to keep listening because I'm going to tell you how I know. Like I said, I was slow walking toward that light, and I had never felt so much peace and serenity in my life. And as I was getting closer to the light, I had lost all track of time. My mind wasn't on the hospital room anymore or anything like that. I was just in this cave, walking down this tunnel and going toward this light. And I was getting closer and closer and closer and closer with each step, going toward the light. And then I heard my mom call my name. And I wasn't moving or anything. Body still in the hospital bed. Wasn't moving. But I was still walking toward this light. Getting closer and closer. And then I heard my mom call my name a second time. I knew it was her, but I didn't care to answer. I didn't care to respond. The only thing I was focusing on was getting to that light. And I was almost there, guys. And this time when my mom called my name, she put her hands on me. And when she put her hands on me, as if the life just came back in me. I mean, it was just like that. And my mom looks at me and she says, "How you doing?" And I slowly raises my head up and I looks at her, looks at my mom, and I said, "Mama, I'm dying." Because I knew exactly what was going on. And she said, "Hold on." My mom went outside that hospital room. I could hear her screaming and hollering outside that door. And she was telling those people, she said, "You got my daughter in here laying up in this hospital bed. You're not coming in here to check on her. You're not coming in here to see about her. You're not doing anything for her." She said, "If you let my daughter die," she said, "I'm going to sue the hell out of this hospital and close y'all down." When my mom said that, the nurse that was coming back and forth in there promising me an epidural, she was the first one in the room. And she says, "But you're not ready to have the baby yet." I told that heifer, no, she wasn't a nurse this time, and she wasn't a lady. I told that heifer, I said, if you take me back into the labor room, I said, I'll show you how ready I am. Doctor came in. He had a little scalpel, and he cut the opening about maybe a half an inch, a quarter inch. He could have did that from the very beginning. They rolled me back into the into the delivery room, and 3 pushes, the baby was born. They could have did that in the first place. I stayed in labor over 48 hours. If the bus had been late, when my mom got there, I would have been dead. I mean, I was already dead, but that would have been the life had left my body. If my mom had not come when she did, and it took her putting her hand on me to get me, because I had stopped breathing, to get me to take a breath. If the bus had been late, it would have been all over. It would have been all over. So they told me in the delivery room I did good, and I said, they slapped my son's bottom, told me it was a boy, slapped the baby was a boy, slapped my son's bottom, and I heard him screaming, and I asked if he had all his fingers and toes, and of course he did. And when he was born, he had a head full of hair, a head full of hair. And they said, you want to hold your baby? And they went to lay him down on my chest, and I told them, I said, clean him up first. And they looked at me real strange, but they cleaned him up, wrapped him up, and put him on my chest. And it was my son and I and my mom ever since. My mom took care of him since he was a baby. We would take turns working. I would watch him when my mom was at work, and then when she was off for the summer, I got a job, and then she would watch him. I told my son this story a few years ago. Now, I don't know why my son would ask me this question. But he said, if the doctor had came in the room and gave you a choice, either you live or your son live, what would you do? What would you have told him? And I looked up at my son and I said, then we die together. I said, no man left behind. There was no way. I don't believe in, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with this, guys. Absolutely nothing wrong with this. But I've heard so many stories where the doctor will come in and tell the husband before they both even come in, and tell the wife, you know, the mom, if she goes through this full labor, it's gonna kill her, and you know, we take the baby now, you know, either both of them will survive, or maybe the baby won't survive and the wife will survive. You know, you can always have another baby, but if your wife passes away, you know, you won't have her anymore. I never believed in that. My whole belief is leave no man behind. If I'm going and if we're together, we're going together. There will be no one person live without the other. That might be a weird way of thinking, but that's how I felt. And when I told my son that story, all he could do, he hugged me so tight, and he said, Mama, I love you. I love you so much. And I said, I love you too, baby. Well, guys, that is the end of the story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I still get sad because my mom is not here anymore. So sometimes for me, it's good to remember the important stuff that her and I have been through. Remember the serious stuff where she was there for me, where she helped me and guided me through different parts of my life. And God bless that she had the knowledge to do so. And it hurts to remember, because the initial part is thinking about my mom that's not here anymore. And then it makes me smile knowing how long my mom has been with me and at my side. And it's good for you guys too. Anybody that have lost a loved one, family or friends, even though it might hurt, please allow yourself to remember the good times that you had with them. Because even though those good times was years and years and years ago, when you remember, it feels like it's not so far in the past. All right, guys. That is the end of the story. And like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And like I always say at the end of every video, I try to remember to say, but before I say that, I'm going to ask you guys to please, 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 please leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your experiences. If you ever went through something like that, where it was either an out-of-body experience or you actually died and then came back. Because believe it or not, when your heart stops beating, even if they use the defibrillator to shock your heart back to working again, when your heart stops beating, you are dead. And when you stop breathing, you're dead. So it don't matter if you've been diagnosed or not. Sometimes when you know, you know. And I know at that time when I was walking in that tunnel toward that light, I know I was dead. Because like I said, when my mom called me the third time and she put her hand on me, I don't know if it was my shoulder or my arm, but she put her hand on me, and the first thing I did was just like that. So I know I had died, guys. And then of course they say in medical school that the brain still lives so many seconds after your heart stopped beating. So I think that is the reason why I could still hear my mom when she was calling my name. But anyway, guys, please leave a comment. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. And like I said, be careful out here with the smoke and the heat and everything. Please be careful out here. And let's work together to live better. And always, always thank you for watching. Bye for now.